The Leased Asset module in NetSuite automatically accounts for leases in accordance with current lease accounting standards ASC 840 and IAS 17, in addition to the upcoming standards ASC 842 and IFRS 16. The Leased Asset module looks like any other module within NetSuite. The first step of using the Leased Assets module is to set up the appropriate lease accounting framework. The lease accounting framework determines the classification of the lease, the accounting treatment for that lease, and how the lease will transition to the new standards. The system allows for leases to transition onto the new accounting standards, either by the full retrospective approach or both cumulative catch-up options as outlined in IFRS 16 and ASC 842. The accounting policy drives the values for the accounting setup fields. Depending on the accounting policy chosen by the user, the system will populate with the correct fields according to the accounting guidance. The system also has the ability for a user to create their own accounting policy for situations unique to their business needs. Next, expense types are identifiers for expenses related to a lease, such as common area maintenance fees, insurance, and taxes. In the next step, we will see how accounts can be automatically specified for each lease type. Next, the user will establish a lease group. A lease group contains the desired lease accounting frameworks previously set up. When a lease is created under this group, a unique lease version will be created for each unique lease accounting framework associated to that group. This will give the user the ability to account for the lease under multiple accounting policies. Here, the user can assign accounts to which the lease transactions will post for finance leases, operating leases, and also the expense types previously set up. If the lessee has payments tied to an index rate, the lessee can set up those index rates in the index rate type setup record. Here, the user keeps an up-to-date record of the index rates, which are then used by the system to automatically recalculate lease payments. The lease list shows a summary of a company's lease portfolio. To add a lease is as simple as clicking on New Lease. The user can now enter all relevant information about a lease, including the lease group, which will dictate which lease versions are created, the discount rate, the annuity type, the vendor, and the commencement date, among others. The user can also attach a lease document to this record. The user may also add other details about the lease, such as initial direct cost, lease incentives, or lease prepayments. These costs factor into the right-of-use asset calculation. Next, if the lease payments are dependent on an index rate, the lessee can enter the appropriate information here. The user enters the lease payment information in the base rent summary. This is used to generate the lease payment schedule. Similar to the base rent summary, the user can enter payment information for the expense types previously set up in the expense type setup form. Other miscellaneous expense information, such as insurance information, is kept in the Other Executory Costs tab. The next step is to submit the lease for approval. At this point, the lease versions are created, one for each accounting framework assigned to the lease group. This lease group has an ASC 842 and IFRS 16 framework. Within each lease version are the same lease details from the head lease, but also a payment schedule showing the required lease payments, a depreciation schedule showing the depreciation of the right-of-use asset, including monthly depreciation expense, a liability schedule showing the amortization of the lease liability, and an executory cost schedule showing the executory cost of that lease. Each lease version also shows a lease classifications tab showing the initial right-of-use asset and initial liability amount, in addition to the newly generated lease classification and transition fields if applicable. Once a lease is approved, the lease becomes active and the lease can be initially recognized on the company's books. The user can also post payments from the payment schedule, interest expense from the liability schedule, depreciation expense from the depreciation schedule, and other expense payments from the executory cost payment schedule. All these transactions are customized to be associated to the lease from which they originated. Added fields such as the lease version ID, lease accounting framework, and version provides traceability for all transactions created through the Leased Assets module. Monthly transactions can be set up to run in batch, truly putting lease accounting in autopilot. If a lease has payments dependent on an index, the application will automatically update lease payments and adjust the lease in accordance with IFRS 16, IAS 17, ASC 840, and 842. The Transitions History tab on each lease record shows all of the transactions that have been posted against this lease, giving an up-to-date balance of the lease liability and right-of-use asset. Other functionality includes the ability to adjust a lease while creating an adjustment journal entry and recalculating the schedules, the ability to create transition journal entries, reverse the lease balances associated with the old standards, and the ability to copy a lease. Soon to be added to the leased asset module are 11 robust reports that will assist clients during their audits and will also help clients meet disclosure requirements under IFRS 16 and ASC 842. Additionally, a leased asset overview with portlets allowing a user to interact with their lease data will be added to the leased assets module.